Hello everybody, welcome to the Yorkshire Bike Mechanics YouTube channel. My name's Dave Kay. I hope you're having a good week, and it's Sunday today. I wouldn't normally work on a Sunday, but we've had such a busy week. I need to try and catch up today. Plus it gives me a bit of a chance to do this video for you. One of our lovely subscribers has asked us if we can do a quick video on how to bleed cord brakes. Okay, so we're going to do that today. It's going to be a fairly quick one. It's not a long process, so let's crack on. Okay, so these are the tools and things that we're going to need to bleed these brakes. The most important part of this kit, well, it's all important, but you cannot do it without this. Okay, this is a SRAM bleed edge tool. You cannot bleed these brakes without this, the most important part. We've got some ordinary .4 fluid, .5 will do, but .4 from Alford's or anywhere where you want to get it from. We've got a couple of syringes here. They look different, but this is the old style with the brass adapter on the end, and this is the new style. They both have the same thing in common. They've both got the same thread, so either one of these will do, whichever one you want to use. I've just put these here because at one time when you bought a new Reverb, you actually got a kit with it, and you got a pair of syringes. So these are the same threads on the ends as what you need for the cord R's, and you need a T10 Torx and a cloth, just an ordinary clean cloth. Now remember, this is .4 fluid, so it is corrosive. So you're advised, if you can, to wear gloves when you do this, just to stop getting any .4 fluid on your hands. And if you're feeling a bit clumsy, then it's worth covering the bike up in places where you could potentially drop some of this stuff on your frame, because it is corrosive, and if you don't wash it off, it'll take the paint off your bike. Okay, so let's get on. So the first thing that we need to do, whether it's SRAM cords or whether it's Shimano, the best thing to do is to take your wheel out first. So let's get that out. Once we've got his wheel out, let's take his pads out. There's a little tiny clip on the other side of this pin which holds the brake pads in. You see that? You need to keep that safe. Get your T10 Torx and just carefully undo this pin that holds your pads in. Pull that out and push your pads out from the bottom up through the top. Okay, and we'll put them to one side. I'm going to need some new ones soon. So put that to one side, which exposes as caliper, and we can see as pistons in the middle there. Let's show you. Okay, so you can see through the top of the caliper, and there's as 4 pistons. Okay, right, so let's look at the lever end. Okay, we're at the lever end now. So the next thing that we need to do is just slightly loosen that T25 up and just lift his lever up slightly on his bar, so it's just nearly horizontal, but that leaves that little bleed screw there at the highest point. Okay, so let's go back down to the bottom end. Now you can see I've moved the camera around to the back of the caliper, and you can see this is the section here that we need to use to bleed these cord R's. So if we take this little rubber grommet out, which will expose the bleed port, and we need a 4mm Allen key. Okay, first of all, and what we need to do is we just need to use this Allen key just to loosen this bleed screw off inside. Okay, now we don't need to undo it the whole way, we just need to loosen it off and then just tighten it up slightly, just a little bit. Okay, and I'll show you why we do that in a second. What we need to do, we need to pull some fluid, some brake fluid, don't forget to keep hold of that rubber. We need to pull some brake fluid up into his bleed edge tool, so we can actually attach it to the caliper. So we'll just drop his bleed edge tool in there, and just very carefully we pull around about an inch worth of fluid there. Take your cloth, okay, and just wrap it round there just to stop any fluid dropping out. Okay, Now there's a little air bubble in there, which is perfectly normal. That's not going to cause us an issue, and you can leave it like that. You don't need to do anything with that at all. Okay, so let's take it to the caliper. So this particular little bleed edge tool, it's got a little tiny rubber ring on the end. So you need to be careful not to make sure that you don't damage that, because that's the only thing on this bleed edge tool, this little rubber grommet, that stops fluid coming back out. Okay, so and if you notice on the end, it's got like a 4mm Allen key as well. So we drop that into there and just make sure it engages in that 4mm Allen bolt that with the bleed screw. Okay, and you need to make sure that it engages in there. It'll soon drop in. There it goes. Okay, so what we need to do now is, if we loosen that off to the left, it opens up this caliper. If we turn it to the right, it'll close the bleed screw off again. Okay, to the left we open it up, and to the right we're shutting it off. Okay, so we can leave that as it is. We can leave that dangling her down, and we're dangling her down, and we'll just shut that off for now. Okay, so we don't need to do anything with that. So what we need to do at the other end is put the syringe on the bleed port at the other end of the system. So we'll do exactly the same what we did with the bleed edge tool, but we use a normal syringe. Okay, and we pull the same amount, round about 1 inch of fluid up into that syringe, and we just take this cloth and we just clean that off at the end. Okay, so that's a syringe with about 1 inch worth of fluid. Okay, we need to pop that. We need to pop it on his lever. So we need his Torx 10 for this. Okay, and we're just going to drop that in there and just make sure that it's loose. And we need his cloth. Just to catch any residue that might come out when you open this bleed port. We need to take that bleed screw all the way out, okay? And then just screw this adapter in here. Just hand tight it. Okay, you don't need to over tighten it, because that little rubber ring at the end will just stop it from leaking out. Okay, so that's in there now. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to go back down to the bottom end again. So we've got a bleed edge tool on his back caliper. That's currently locked off. We've got a syringe on his handlebar lever over that end. Okay, that's currently open. We've got about 1 inch worth of fluid in there. So what we need to do, we need to get these pistons in this particular caliper back into the housings. Now there's a few ways we can do that, but the best way of doing it, not to damage the pistons, is to put the old pads back in. Okay, so we can actually use the pads as a lever to push the pistons back in. Doing it that way will stop us damaging those pistons. So this is a way we should do it to stop any damage. So let's get these pads back in. Okay, and I'll just drop this pin loosely in the top, just so they don't drop out. Now the other thing that we need to point out is that SRAM caliper pistons are notorious for not going back into the housing as easy as what you would expect them to. SRAM calipers sometimes be quite awkward, and you can be quite tempted to actually lever too hard. And so this is probably a best method of putting the pads in, because it makes sure that we get even pressure on the pistons all the way through the back of the metal pad. So what we need to do is, let's open this bleed tool at the back just slightly, just a quarter of a turn. Okay, and we'll get as piston retracting tool here If you've not got one of these, get one. They're brilliant, okay? It wasn't expensive. We've had this one for years and it's never actually bent or anything like that. So, excuse me. So we've opened this bleed port here. We've put its pads back in and we just need to put this lever tool in here between the pads and just gently lever those pistons back into the housing, okay? Now you need to bear in mind that not all SRAM calipers, the pistons might not go flush back into the housing itself. They might be just proud, which is fine, okay? So get them back into the housing as far as they'll go, okay? And then lock this off here. Now what that's done, that's actually forced any fluid that's behind those pistons back up into the syringe, up in the syringe at the top. So what we need to do now is we need to bleed the whole system. Now this is where we do it very similar to Shimano. We need to open this bleed port, okay? Take the top of a syringe, okay? Also, with us, if you're right-handed, use your right hand on the back syringe. Take the lever syringe with your left hand, if you can see there. See if I can lift camera up a bit. Take the lever with your left hand and the back lever with your right hand, being careful to make sure this bleed edge tool don't fall out. Okay, and you need to push the fluid from the back to the front. Now what you can do is you can actually pull the left hand one up and push with your right hand. If you're finding it difficult, you might be able to open this a little bit more. Okay, so you can actually push them backwards and forwards. Can you see the bubbles coming out there at the back one? So I'm pushing with my right hand thumb and the fluid's going back through the system, up through the lever and into the syringe. And then I'm letting go of the back one and I'm pushing with my left hand and it's going back through the system up into the syringe. You can probably see it rising there in the syringe. Being careful not to make sure that you push the whole lot of fluid out and you're pushing air through, okay? So what you need to do then, okay, when you've satisfied yourself that there's no more air bubbles in the system, you've seen it all come out, okay, you can let go of the syringe, both of them at the same time, okay, and then that might have, if you've pushed too hard, you might find that the pistons have come out a little bit from where you actually left them. So what we can do is take us piston retraction tool and we can push them back to where you pushed them before. Okay, just to get them back where they were before. Okay. So now we're left with a fully bled system. There's no air in that at all. As pistons are back, we've pulled and pushed either side to get the air out. So what we need to do now is just double check that there's no more air in that back caliper there at the top end. So we can press his lever with his left hand, making sure that the syringe is actually up in the air. Okay, and we can keep his hand on the lever. Okay, if you want to, you can use a tie wrap. And you need to keep that lever closed. With your right hand, you need to pull the syringe up. Not too much, you'll feel resistance. And what that's doing is pulling any air that might be at the top of that caliper out into that syringe. You just need to do it gently. You will know if there's something coming out. Those bubbles, you'll see them. Okay, there's none in there at all. Now we can lock that back off again. We get us cloth, pull that bleed edge tool out whilst keeping your finger over the top to stop any fluid coming out. Take your 4mm Allen key and just tighten that up hand tight, and then you can put the black rubber that came out back in. Important to keep the muck out, okay? And then we can take the old pads out and they can go straight in bin, keeping the pin. So the top end, what we need to do now is we need to take this lever off the top. You can get us cloth, just gently unscrew it. You might get a little bit of fluid out of there. If you do, just wipe it away with your cloth. Put the little bleed port screw back in that you took out on your Torx 10. Okay, give it another wipe. Okay, being careful not to press the lever. We'll bob some new pads in. Got some nice shiny ones here, some SRAM ones with a new pin and everything, so that's a good do. Okay, so if you notice, I'm just leaving them in there for now. Best thing to do is give your hands a clean. So get a fresh cloth. If you've got one of them degreasing wipes, give your hands a wipe with that, or give them a spray. I have some spray that I use. Okay. And now we can just bob these new pads in here without the fear of getting any grease on them, as pistons are back, so we don't need to worry about them. Putting a new pin in because we've got a new one, because we've spent a fortune on original pads, like you would. Just hand tight that, and then put the new clip on the end. Okay, job's a good one. So we just need to just give them a little bit of a wipe. Move your lever back down where you wanted it before. Tighten it up. Put your wheel back in, and job's a good one. So there you go. A bleed on a Code R brake. It's the same on the front. There's no difference. The only thing you need to do now is when you put your wheel back in, is centralise your pistons on your rotor and get your pads square. Just make sure those pistons, those 4 pistons, are coming out exactly at the same time. That way you get a decent bite on your lever, and then you can adjust that for how you want it. Give your lever a wash, spray it with water, just get any remaining fluid off there, and just that's it. It's fairly straightforward. You've got to have the right tool. Get yourself a bleed edge tool. Use .4 fluid or .5, and you should find it fairly straightforward to do. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you can, that'd be great, and I'll see you soon. Toodle pip.